See you all. They are. We're being recorded, so be careful what you say. Okay, so Diane, would you like to just take it away?
Thank you very much, David. I suspect there might be one or two more people joining us in the next few minutes. So before I actually start my presentation, I'm going to ask you a question. We're going to be talking about the challenges of engaging students with maths and the challenges for organisations and for students and their teachers. So before we do anything else, I'd like to ask you what we mean by engaging with maths. So can you just give it a minute, or well, 10 seconds will do actually. What comes to mind when we think about engaging with maths? And whatever comes to your mind about engaging with maths, can you just put a 1 or 2 word answer in the chat? Anything at all. No right and wrong answers here. It's not a maths class, but just pop anything in that comes to mind about engaging with maths. I can see some things coming up nicely here. Oh yeah, motivation, top of the list there. Thank you, Marcus. Application, signing up for a class. Well, yeah, that's getting into it, isn't it? Being excited to learn maths. Excitement and engagement. Great. Maths in the world. But maths anxiety. Overcoming that is a challenge. Some tasks, working on some tasks in mathematics is getting engaged with it, yeah. Functionality, using it. It's interesting how many of these mathematically educated people that are in this seminar can't count to 2, but there we are. We've got some 4-word answers and a few longer than that. Yeah, interest, something about being interested, noticing the mathematical demands they're faced with. Awareness of maths, thinking about the work at hand to see relationships between known and unknown. Right, so I don't really need to do a seminar, do I? Because you've given me lots of answers already about what engaging with maths actually means. I'm muting myself. I think we've muted everybody else now. I'm going to share some thoughts, a lot of it based on my own research in the last few years. And we're going to have time for a bit of interaction and also some time, we hope, in breakout rooms. So I'll share screen now and just start to talk through some ideas. I'm not trying to make this too academic today, though there is some academic challenge in it for those who would like it. So the situation where I've been examining this in particular has been vocational education for students aged 16 or more in further education colleges in England, which are very large institutions that offer vocational education and often academic education as well. Your context might be different. There will be things that we can share that will work across contexts, but there are things that might be specific to your context that you can discuss later in breakout rooms. The policy here is a real influence on what happens because students take the GCSE exam in maths at age 16 at the end of school, and then they can continue in school or they can go to one of these further education colleges. But if they haven't got the required grade, they have to keep attending maths classes, they have to keep studying maths, and they have to retake this examination, or at least that's the aim, until they achieve the required grade. Or they get to age 19, in which case the policy doesn't apply anymore, so they can just stop. The research that I'm basing most of this on is the Mathematics and Further Education Colleges project, which is a large nationwide project that I co-led a few years ago, and a more recent project that was funded by the Department for Education in England, the Whole College Approach. I'm going to refer to findings from both of those, and I won't reference absolutely everything. So if there isn't a reference, it's probably come from one of those two sources. Now, the MyFIC project, that's the first one, indicated that the student engagement with post-16 maths might be considered at 3 different levels or 3 different ways. And you've hit on some of these already. So one is actually getting yourself there to a maths lesson. If you don't attend, it's pretty hard to engage in any other way. But once you're there, we might think of engagement as engaging with classroom. I would suggest there's a further level of engagement here, which is actually engaging with the maths concepts and ideas, the mathematical thinking. And in my observations, it's possible for students to sit in a classroom and engage with some activity, but not really engage with the mathematical thinking. So we might think of them as stages, but actually they're interlinked. So engagement with maths can stimulate more engagement with classroom activity and a desire to attend the maths classes. Now, I want you to think for a moment, before I go on to the next slide, about yourself. Have you ever sat in a classroom or a session or been in a situation, a learning situation, where you were not engaged? Now, I'm not asking for answers in the chat now, just in case you've already disengaged from this seminar. But can you think of a situation? What did it feel like when you really didn't want to engage with something? I thought about this a while ago, and I remembered one occasion. I was actually doing my doctorate at the time, and I went to a session. It was something about writing. I can't remember what. And the tutor explained what she wanted us to do, and everybody got busy on their laptops or their paper doing something. And I did nothing because I didn't actually understand what she wanted us to do. I felt incredibly isolated because I seemed to be the only one who didn't know what to do. And even when I asked the tutor, I was brave enough to ask, I still didn't understand what she was really asking us to do. My engagement with that session disappeared. All I could think of was, I don't need to be here. I don't have to be here. I could walk out of here, which was rather an extreme reaction, and I rather shocked myself at the time. I did stick it through and I did manage to do something, but it revealed to me how it really feels when you just don't get something. So there has been a lot of research about motivation engagement. I'm going to look at some of that research from England, apart from our own, just to summarise some of the reasons why students may not be motivated and engaged with maths. Really common is the prevalence in England of negative prior experiences, particularly with maths. Sometimes that's led to a lack of confidence. Sometimes it's been perpetual failure or perception of failure, not necessarily the same thing. Anxiety with maths is well known across the world as something that does prevent students from engaging with it. It might be about the maths itself or about taking a maths exam in particular, but also perceptions that maths is not relevant come through strongly. Exposure to negative cultural attitudes is also something that Bowman mentions has been prevalent in Western societies, that actually maths is an elitist subject. There's a group of people who can do it. There's a group that can't. And he talks about this separation in society and these negative attitudes. And when you're exposed to those, it's hard not to pick them up. Another one that's been mentioned is peer pressure. And sometimes it's just not cool to engage with maths. So all those things can create difficulties and challenges for educational institutions and for teachers. For teachers, it requires a classroom approach that isn't just about developing the mathematical thinking, but it's about changing students' emotional responses, beliefs, and attitudes. And that becomes really important if you have a large number of students who, in your class or in your institution, who are not really wanting to engage with maths. So, here's a quick question. What challenges have you faced with student engagement? I'll give you a little pause here, and there's a Jamboard that I'd like you to go to. In order to do that, I need to post that in the chat so that you can go straight to it. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute. I'm going to post that link in the chat. And here's your first opportunity to go to our Jamboard. We'll use this again later, so don't worry if you struggle a bit to get there. But if you click on the link in the chat, it should take you to a page, and we're going to look at page 1 first. If you've not used Jamboard before, it might take a minute for it to come up, but hopefully at least some of you will get there. And on the first page, I've posted that question. If you're not used to using Jamboard, you simply need to go down the little menu towards the left-hand side of your screen, and you should see something that looks like a sticky note. And if you click on that, you'll be able to write yourself a sticky note and put it somewhere on the page. And then some clever person can start moving them around, because if we get some that are similar, we could put them together. Let's have a look and see how that's going. I can see 1 or 2 people already on the page. Yes, I've got I was never good at maths. Oh, everything I've already mentioned. Well, I was hoping you'd think there's some more things. So what challenges have you faced, either as a teacher, researcher, observer? Yeah, the cell phones get in the way, don't they? They can be useful, but they also get in the way. Okay, let's keep popping these around and we can I'm ready for the class when I'm clearly not. Yeah, behaviour in terms of attendance and behaviour in the class of different sorts. Yeah, often coming to the college to study another course, it's not the math. Yeah, sometimes using groups, but then they're not actually discussing, so they're not engaging. They've turned up, they are there. Yeah, you can see an obvious lack of interest sometimes. I'll just give you another few seconds if you want to add anything else, or if you're struggling to get on there. Brilliant. So I think we have faced some challenges. Hopefully later on, we're going to think about some of those challenges and how we might overcome them. The sort of strategies that we might use. Right, so I'm just going to go back to my presentation. Whoops, wrong one. There we are, it's better. So, you might be really enjoying that Jamboard, but you can go back to it later. Let's have a think about a few things that have come up that might be useful as ideas to think about. So one of the things that I've noticed particularly in a lot of the research is this whole idea of relevance. Relevance as a motivational factor. And the difference between Students who are motivated because they see maths as having a use value, and students who are motivated because they see maths as having an exchange value. If it's got a use value, it means they see a practical use for it that's related to their interests as an individual. That tends to be a really strong motivation with students, particularly the vocational students that I've researched with. Exchange value is about the value of the qualification itself. That's important to a lot of students, particularly in England, where the GCSE exam is the gateway. That certificate is the gateway that gets you through to further study, that gets you through to a number of career choices. If you want to go on that route and go to university, study for certain types of qualifications beyond GCSE, or even to gain employment, that is a really important qualification. The problem that we saw was that for some students, the exchange value is a strong motivation, but for others, their emotional responses are stronger than the exchange value in their thinking and their behaviour. And although they know they need to get this qualification, they still don't always want to engage or find it difficult to engage. So, what about a teacher response? Now, all I've done here is put together a few of the ideas that are talked about in the research. It's not a comprehensive list, and we'll have a chance to talk about this more later. In particular, positive relationships between teachers and students tend to encourage engagement with maths, promoting the belief that everyone can succeed. That's related to growth mindset. Actually, believing that I can succeed, I can do attitude. Sometimes collaborative activities can help engagement. Sometimes they can't, or they don't. But that social involvement in the classroom with other students and with the teacher is really important. Sometimes student involvement in setting their own goals, getting them actually having some agency, or giving them some agency is important, or particular strategies to develop resilience or reduce anxiety if they are problems for the students. Now, you might have tried some of those in your own classroom, you might have read about them, and there are other ideas too. So what I want to do for the second part of the presentation is give a little bit of time to a second type of response, and that's the organisational response. And this is based on my most recent research. So this is where we're looking at multi-level approach: teacher, classroom, organisation. Now, what we noticed particularly in the Maths in FE Colleges project was that everyone said maths was important across the whole organisation, whether they taught on a vocational programme, supported students, were in management, or taught maths. But it wasn't there in the eyes of the students. So strategies that did seem to help were highlighting maths in different parts of the curriculum. Not going overboard with it, but just highlighting where the maths was, so that the students were reminded that maths did exist in other places and not just in a maths classroom. Stronger still was connecting maths across the curriculum, and I'll give you a few examples of particular areas where that was worked on and the sort of revelation that gave to maths teachers and to vocational teachers when they saw the connections. Simple connections to students' interests can be useful, emphasising practical and personal relevance and using meaningful context for learning maths. But of course, we have to be careful with context. They do need to accurately model the maths and not just be a superficial wraparound of some words that actually are not always realistic. So we've got a couple of different ways of looking at this. In the whole college approach, we were particularly keen in this project to develop this idea of a shared responsibility across the college for students' development of their math skills. We wanted all staff to be engaged themselves in a collaborative effort in an appropriate way. We saw this as a sort of continuum from fragmentation of strategies and approaches across the college to something that was more coordinated, where people were more collaborative and actually were actively participating in their own way in trying to improve students' math skills. Now, there are lots of approaches to trying to make changes in colleges, and to enable this sort of change, we wanted to work with a group in each college that represented, in a way, what we were trying to achieve in a bigger scale across the whole college. So we asked for a team of maths teacher, vocational teacher, maths manager, vocational manager, and senior leader. That was really important. And first of all, what we wanted them to do was to develop a culture in this team of mutual respect and trust, so that they could then work collaboratively to identify the issues, what was causing those issues, and to develop their own specific interventions for their college context. So that was our starting point, and we worked with 16 colleges to do this. So it wasn't a set programme, but it was about developing the shared responsibility. And we worked with them on various tasks and supported them through a year of trying to make these sorts of changes that were going to develop this shared responsibility across departments and at different levels. Key words here were collaboration, mutual respect, understanding of each other's points of view, and communication. I'm going to mention a few really key ideas in this whole college approach, because this whole college approach was actually about trying to bring about organisational change. Organisational change that was going to benefit students and their teachers in terms of their maths development. Now, when we start thinking about organisations, these were large organisations. And with large organisations, there is a complexity. The complexity of human interactions and human systems that means you can't just put together a linear sequence of actions. We often try to do that sort of thing, but it doesn't work. And so some of the steps and planned organisational change processes that are based on a series of steps are not likely to be effective, because they tell you what the steps are, but not how to achieve them. Getting a whole organisational change is a challenging process. The second concept that's really important is the holistic approach, and thinking about how the separate parts make up the whole. Bearing in mind that we're dealing with interactive systems, and interactive systems, again, don't follow a set, easy pattern. But people in organisations could belong to several different systems. They interact with a number of different people, and they change as a result of those interactions. And that's how the system, the human system, begins to change. It is important to have this multi-level collaboration. The top-down approach from senior leaders is shown not to work. And we have to use those social processes of interaction to develop collective meaning. Now, if change were just as easy as telling everyone what to do, why do so many people get speeding fines? We all know what the speed limit is. Why don't we do it? We have to do more to bring about change than just publish a set of rules. It's also about being reflective, about an inquiry approach, and using feedback from within the system. So with these teams, we got feedback from within the system, from people in different positions in the organisation. And we had ideas from different people in the organisation. Their perspectives were really important. So the engaging with people and culture was important. And that's why we wanted to build this culture within a small team who could then spread it across the college through their actions and through engaging others. Use their multiple perspectives and engage them really in their own process of organisational learning. Bringing about educational change is a learning experience for everyone, but you need to do it in a culture of inquiry, innovation, and exploration, and use those multiple perspectives. So this process that we developed, I'm not going to explain it all now on the programme, did have an impact on colleges. And I'm going to share, before we move to breakout rooms, for a few minutes now, some of the cases, the college cases that we put together. Now, I'm not naming the colleges here. There is a website where some of the colleges have got their names published and can be identified. So there isn't an issue about that. But for the purposes of this seminar, I thought it was better to keep them anonymous. So College A used this process and they recognise the importance of accurate data. There's a lot of data when you've got hundreds of students doing maths. But they also benefited from the collaboration in other ways. So they examined what data they had about student attendance, and that really revealed where the real issues were. So they weren't diverging and trying to deal with everybody and everything. They could focus on the real issues and the weakest areas of the college. But they also had maths teachers on another level assisting vocational departments during the induction period. That's the first week or so of the term when students are new to the college and they tend not to follow their normal timetable. They do induction activities, orientation activities. And when the maths teachers just helped with those, it helped the students see them as one of the teaching team before they ever got to a maths classroom. So they didn't just walk into a maths classroom, see a maths teacher and think, here's the maths teacher. They saw a teacher. They got to know the teacher before they got to maths. And that actually had an impact on relationships. The quotes I'm going to use here are simply from the reports the colleges sent to us, and they are almost all from the head of maths and English. So here there's a key thing here was that collaboration was really important, not just to get those solutions, find out where the issues were, but it addressed other things as well. And it addressed fears and resistance amongst other colleagues who weren't initially involved. So they found some hidden benefits to this collaborative approach. Again, the collaborative approach reappears over and over again in these cases. In this college, they were particularly keen to work with the maths team were keen to work with construction and engineering. Construction and engineering were in the building at the opposite side of the car park to where maths was taught. And the bus stop was at the side of the car park. So it was very common for students to find their way to the bus stop instead of to their maths classroom. The maths teacher went to the construction engineering classes. The construction engineering teachers came to his maths classroom. They really found it illuminating to see maths in different contexts. The maths teacher was amazed to see the students using maths quite naturally in the vocational workshops and amazed to see what maths it was. But the engineering construction teachers learnt more about how they could prepare students for the GCSE maths examination. They learnt simple things like what they'd been doing on a calculator, the students had to do without a calculator in the exam. So why not just change the way they were doing it to make it fit better and to support the students with doing things without a calculator? So their summary was, we've learned that cross-college communication and collaboration on teaching subjects such as maths is not something to be addressed as a small embedding research project by one teacher. That does have value, of course, or an exercise in achieving Ofsted-ready paperwork. Ofsteds are inspection ready. Concentrated on photography and creative arts. They felt maths was a bit neglected in that area, and they wanted students to see the relevance of maths. The vocational teachers themselves developed new ideas about how to use maths as part of what they were naturally doing. So the images at the right-hand side are all to do with networks and art that was developed from creating networks of different places in the college that they needed to visit during their orientation period. Don't ask me exactly how they were done, but it was a fascinating way in which they began to bring in some mathematics with different angles and parallel lines being obvious in the images. There's a quote from a student here, and I'll read it out because it's not written in amazing English. When I started this course, I didn't know maths was in photograph, stroke art and design. I personally don't like maths, but it is important to understand maths. But now I have an understanding that it is very important because of the maths task. For extra sure. What a lovely comment by a student that's encountered maths in their creative arts course. And the college summarised that they've been able to make an impact with a small group of students in a short space of time. They didn't work on the project for very long. They joined later. But for no financial outlay, and the teachers and their students saw art in a different way by using this mathematical lens. One of the difficulties of this college identified was finding time to talk. Vocational maths teachers worked in the same building, but they didn't talk to each other. They were given a free lunch, and that really stimulated some really good conversation about what was going on from two different perspectives. It led to increased understanding of the benefits of collaborating, and eventually in this college, maths teachers became integrated into the departments in several ways, either through team talk sessions, actually being a vocational tutor, or sharing staff rooms with vocational staff. They had a really clear impact on their attendance data. So they closed the attendance gap in the areas that they were working with. That was one of the big successes. But it wasn't down to a single process or procedure. It really hinged on this better collaboration and input from everyone. In this college, they engaged in something they call sharing the love of maths. The key thing about this was the maths team had developed resources and continued to develop resources to help vocational staff teach the maths within their courses. But then they realised they weren't being used. They needed to strengthen the relationships and develop trust. And so they engaged in some classroom visits where a maths teacher went to the vocational area. It's surprising what students think and what they perceive when a maths teacher turns up in their vocational session. But sometimes it gives a student a real opportunity to show what they could do and take control and say, this is what I'm doing and why, and explain to their maths teacher. It can change the relationship. But importantly here, positive relationships developed between maths staff and vocational staff, because vocational staff realised the maths staff were actually pretty useful in terms of somewhere to go for support and help with their own teaching of the maths within their area. So initially, they thought they were going to work on embedding and contextualising maths, but actually that became less of an issue. More important it was to build these cross-college relationships. Simply here, the college recognised that it was a complex problem and there wasn't going to be an easy answer. And it was by using the different perspectives that begin to work together. And this is a vocational teacher who said they really enjoyed the collaboration and communication between them and the GCSE maths teachers. A lot more fluidity. They felt they were giving the students a better support and a better experience. And finally, two very quick ones. The idea of having a linked tutor, a maths teacher who links the vocational department, really helped here in terms of exploring the issues. And as they worked together, a similar thing happened. The vocational staff began to welcome training and support from the maths team instead of running away from it, because they could see the benefits for their students. These were hair and beauty tutors in particular who were involved in this activity. And finally, another example where there was new collaboration between maths and vocational teachers. They had to break out of what they call their silos in their departments. And they did find some new and effective strategies. But in particular, they invented and designed some activities that were math-based, that math staff, students and vocational teachers would do together. One of these was a darts activity where the students actually did a practical darts activity. They had a competition, but they had to do maths alongside it with their scores and work out all sorts of different things. And the verdict on this, well, this was from the maths teacher, one of the maths teachers involved. This student has had his head on the table all year, but he's been the team leader working through maths today. Suddenly he could take a different role in a different environment. And the student said, it was the first time I've come out of maths buzzing. I can ask how to do the maths now that I know I'm better than him, that's his teacher, at darts. Now that's all I want to say. We had all this range of different things and more besides that people did when they identified the problem for the whole organisation. And a lot of these are linked together because they're going in the same direction. They had new ways of working, improved communication, better collaboration. There's evidence of changes in culture and use of more authentic vocational context. That's what affected the staff. The students, there was evidence of changes in attitude toward maths and maths teachers. Stronger curriculum collections, perceptions of relevance were improved, improvements actually in the data and student attendance at lessons and higher rates of attendance for the maths exam, which is all going in the right direction. Now, my final question then for us in breakout rooms is, how do you think student engagement with maths can be improved? So here's an opportunity for you to go into breakout rooms, share what you know, what you've seen, what you've observed, what you've heard tonight that made sense or didn't. And I'd like you to, when you've had a few minutes in breakout rooms, also add some things to the Jamboard. So keep that Jamboard open and you'll get the chance to put something on page 2 of the Jamboard about things that might actually help rather than what the problems are. So I'm going to hand over to Charlotte, who's going to pop you in, or Charlotte or Linda, who's going to pop you into breakout rooms.
I fix it.
Great. So I think you just need to join what appears on your screen.
So I didn't move, so Catherine, I think. Well, she has already joined.
So we just got Janet.
Yeah. I'll join with room as well.
Hello, Simra. We've just gone to breakout rooms. We're having a discussion, so I can send you to a breakout room if you like. Let me just have a look. Got 3. Mm. You're muted, Charlotte.
Yeah, I know. I just saw that computer. I forgot to say how long you want them to. It's really good
Oh,
discussions.
good. Have you been
But
in
a
more
little
than
bit.
one? Have you jumped around or just
No, I
one?
jumped into one, and I went to David's group, and it took some while because it appears as if we have. It's a difficult topic because
Yes,
kind of you don't know it yet, and we have so different vocational systems.
yes,
Um, Especially, I think Sweden is quite separate from the rest of you,
yeah,
and the math classes in adult education is completely separated
yeah,
from the vocational packages. So,
yeah. But I think
on the
this is
other
good.
hand,
This is good, isn't it? To make those comparisons and realize not
it's
everywhere is
really
the
important.
same.
Yeah, but I was thinking, I think but about organizational learning and what's happening, and because I've been looking into organizational learning right now, and the process, the system you described,
Yeah,
it's kind of that the humans in these systems are just links or bits delivering knowledge or something, but you don't stop to see what's happening in the classroom, what's happening in the workplace, what's happening in the teach staff
mm-hmm.
room. You miss with the organizational learning perspective.
Mm.
So I think it's kind of, you see, with the more complex systems you have, with
Mhm.
these interconnected systems,
Mm.
suddenly the old way of thinking doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
So you
Yeah,
have kind of, and that's why I choose practice theory instead
right.
to see. But I think everyone is struggling how to understand how to change, and I think that's in action research.
Mm.
This what you say, the teachers, you have to change the whole organization and how it impacts on the students' math
Yeah,
learning, and that's
yeah,
really interesting, and it's
yeah.
good.
I mean, we drew particularly on complexity theory and complex systems and soft systems analysis.
Yeah.
That's it was most relevant and it worked. When we put that into practice and developed a program based on that, we could
Mm.
see the results.
Mm.
And they said, we've never done it like this before. Anyway, we better send a message.
Yeah.
We want
Do
5
you
minutes
want
to the end for wrapping up, don't we?
wait, yeah.
So can we bring them back in
Yeah, I
two
bring them back
minutes?
right now.
Come back in 2 minutes. We should
In
be,
1 minute, they will go back.
yeah, have you done that?
Yeah,
You do that.
I
Oh,
did
yeah,
that.
okay.
They have changed everything, so everything is completely different today. So I'm
Yeah,
quite confused, I must say. But anyway, we have about the system theories, because in the informatics where I was before,
yeah,
everyone is struggling on the best way to
yeah,
describe and how organizations change,
yeah.
and
Well,
it's
it's the soft
complex.
systems that, um,
Yeah,
softest systems thinking that we found most
yeah,
helpful. So,
that's
right.
interesting.
Okay, well, we've got a few points on here, but I'm going to ask them when they come back to put some more on. Yeah? Great. Well, welcome back as you're coming back from your rooms. Now, as always, you probably didn't have time to talk about everything that you wanted to talk about, but I hope you realise that you are all in different situations and there are some principles that can apply and the things that can transfer across, and there's some things that only work in certain contexts. So I'm just going to give you 1 minute to post anything else onto that Jamboard on page 2, particularly that you would like to say, because it's an easy way of capturing lots of different opinions rather than just listening to 1 or 2 people. So I'll just give you another minute to pop on some more sticky notes, or you can do it in a text box as well. Doesn't matter which way. So I can see by looking at the Jamboard myself that you've got some really interesting practice there in Australia where you do team teach. That's something that the UK doesn't seem to use very much, mainly because of funding reasons, I think. Canada, it's often separate. Yeah, yeah. So some particular examples. Any other ideas of improvement that you've talked about? Or anything interesting that you can comment on to do with student engagement in your country, in your system? Yeah, yes, that's an interesting comment here about maths teachers need to be willing to change. So it's not just that view in society that needs to change of maths teachers, perhaps maths teachers need to change themselves. Right, lovely one. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. In New Zealand, our foundation tutors are not mathematicians, so they don't have sufficient confidence. I think that's what we found in our research, that the pairing up was really helpful when vocational teachers realised that the maths teachers could help them. There were a lot of benefits. We've got some practical suggestions here about fun applications and yeah, maths teachers following the vocational students, which again happened quite a lot in our research, and it was amazing how much they learned just from being there, being in that other environment. And it helps students see them differently, see their maths teachers differently, and that helped then back in the maths classroom. Yeah, yeah, that's right. If you don't talk to each other, how can you make things relevant? Right, so I think I've used up my time this evening. We're nearly there. So I'm just going to hand back to David now to just wrap things up for the final minute and tell us perhaps about anything else that the next seminar.
I don't know about the next seminar.
Well, I think the answer is we haven't got the title of the date yet, but there will be a next seminar.
There will be
probably
many
in February or possibly early March.
Well, yes, generally there will be many next seminars, and cinemas. But thank you very, very, very much. I think it was a very, very good, clear, comprehensive summary of, I think, of many years of research that I know you were involved in. And I think I'm really pleased to see those contributions that we just had coming in of people's ideas, and that can in itself be very useful to us. I mean, it is the area where we want to see that the mathematics and numeracy is taken forward in every way, and certainly those comments there were of linking into different areas is always important, for it to be seen that it is necessary, as you know, as well as useful. Thank you everybody for joining us. It's been really good to see you, and do look out. You're signed up, which I expect everybody is. You're signed up to ALM. You'll get a notice about the next seminar when we've agreed a date and a speaker. And it's been really good to see you all. Many, many, many thanks. And have a good evening or good afternoon or whatever you're having.
Yeah, thank you too for me. Thank you for all those suggestions. I will keep that Jamboard open for at least some weeks, so you can revisit it if you keep the link, post anything else, have another look at what other people have put there. And I hope that that's been useful to people.
Thank you.
And I hope, well, it does seem like you've engaged with it, so that's for benefit, isn't it?
Yes. And we're all still here, you see.
Yeah.
Not like you running out.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, and we hope to see you all again soon. If you want to get in contact with me about anything that I've said, you can do that via the website, via the ALM chair email, and that will get to me.
And you can get in contact with Diane about anything else about ALM as well.
Yeah, that's true. You can.
And actually, one thing here, if you do want to say something to the membership of ALM, we do have our regular bulletin. And if you fancy writing a paragraph just about what you do, because you've been thinking, oh, well, I do something like that, we would always welcome it. There's always space for, you know, a couple of comments from our members of what's happening and of what they're doing. Something particular has happened in your area, it'd be great to hear. Right.
Yeah.
Many, many thanks.
I think we're done, and you're welcome to leave, but yeah, do keep in touch.